Well, after this challenging winter, do you need some advice to help you ease into your April garden? You've come to the right place. I'm here to talk about April in your garden right now. So, the start of spring is always very tricky. We never know when it's going to start. Really, it's dictated by the weather. As much as we like to think it's by the date in the calendar or by the time change after daylight savings time, really, when it comes to your garden, it really depends on spring temperatures, especially evening temperatures. Weather and ground conditions are the determining factor for our lawns, for the soil, and for when things get growing. And considering those things change from year to year, and especially this year where we've had an unseasonable amount of snow that we haven't had in years, and right into March. I was driving around just north of us in Durham region, and they still have quite a bit of snow. So even though snow might be gone in your front lawn, you're just north of us, they still have snow because of the evening temperatures, and the cold weather, the cold temperatures that still are persisting. So really, one of the first things I want to talk about when it comes to April in the garden is really patience. And really remembering that even if the snow is gone visibly from your lawn, that there still is an enormous amount of moisture there. Frost is still in the ground, frost is still there. And so really using your patience to stay off your lawn, stay out of your garden as much as possible in the beginning few weeks of April. It's really important to not just be compressing and walking all over the soil in both your lawn and garden. You really want it to be in the prime position to upset, because we know in April we're going to get rain now that the snow is done and the temperatures, in the good old fairy tale or wives' tale of April showers bring May flowers, we're going to get rain. And so we want that rain. We've done all this work to improve our soil, both for our lawns as well as for our gardens. And so we want to make sure that it's ready to absorb that rain and not run off into the catch basins. That is the goal. So as we ease into April and hopefully into spring, there are a few things. So we'll start with lawns. So my best advice, like I said, is to hold off on raking, hold off on doing a lot of walking around and damaging the lawn. When you rake too early, you're creating you think you're removing the thatch and you're creating a lot of space for new grass to grow. Well, the problem is lots of times the weeds actually grow faster and grow in their more cold season than our lawns. So then you're just kind of exposing bare earth to weed seeds, and you could end up with a whole other problem on your hand. So just use patience there. If you have a really dry, area or something like that, I know we're all in have different sun exposures. So it's just if your lawn is very wet and you're sinking in and you're taking up a lot of soil when you're raking, then it really isn't a good idea. And just because your neighbor across the street can do it, it doesn't mean that you can do it. So consider that as well. So really consider your own conditions. And also, one thing I want to talk about is grass seed. So I know everybody's keen to, green it up and get out there, and the commercials on TV and social media have started. And really, again, it goes back to nighttime temperatures. Grass seed does not germinate until it's above 16 degrees at night. Fahrenheit. And so you can double check what I'm saying, read the fine print on the back of your grass seed bags for the ideal temperature that they say that the grass seed will start to germinate. And so it's best to wait until the soil really warms up if you want to be successful as far as grass seed goes. If you are anxious to do something, you can start off with a organic, slow release lawn fertilizer. Again, like the name says, it will release slowly and it will break down organically. And all it's doing is improving the soil so that the grass seed can be more successful, and your existing grass, your existing lawn can be more successful. If you are concerned about weeds and you have or you have a weed problem last year that you noticed and you want to try something environmentally friendly and natural, because we don't have any systemic weed and feeds anymore, you can consider a product called corn gluten. And the time in the spring to spread it is actually early when the forsythia is blooming. So once you see the forsythia blooming, it is time to apply corn gluten, and it is a weed inhibitor. So it does is it when the corn gluten breaks down, it coats the seeds of the weeds and prevents them from germinating. Now, it will also prevent your grass seed from germinating, which is another reason to hold off on spreading your grass seed. So that's something to consider. Now, the one thing about corn gluten, it is, and most natural products, it's not a one and done. It's a long-term strategy. So you will need to do it again in the fall. And usually it takes a good 2 years before you really start to see the benefit. So it's one of those things that it will build up on the lawn and build up coating those weed seeds. So that's one tool in the toolbox to getting ahead of weeds. And that's great if you are somewhere where you get a lot of them blown in from neighbors or from a commercial park or a public space where, there really isn't weed control happening on their space, and then the weeds blow onto you. So that's something to consider. And I do want to also recommend taking a look at West Coast Seeds, checking out their website. They have some great products for some difficult lawn solutions. So they have an alternative lawn blend. They have a bee turf seed. They have a chafer, chafer beetle resistant lawn seed, and clover as well, micro clover lawn solutions. So they've got some really interesting solutions. So you can, and they're Canadian. They are in the West Coast, but that doesn't matter. They're tested all across Canada. So you can check out West Coast Seeds for and see if they have a solution to one of or two of your lawn problems. So hopefully that is all you need to know about your lawn for April, is really patience and waiting for those evening temperatures to warm up. As far as annuals and perennials, or annuals and vegetables, so annuals, I think of flowers. So April's a perfect time, especially if you want to get children involved, but April's a perfect time. You're not too late. I know people start talking about seed starting all the way back in February, but April's fine. So you can get a tray, get some soil, get a grow light or two, and start some seeds from your home. And whether it's like lettuce and spinach are great cold crops, you can start them inside and move those ones quickly outside. Which is really, really handy. And if you're wanting to do something like peppers and tomatoes, you're still not behind. Just check the last frost date, which will help guide you a little bit. But really, we still have 6 or 8 weeks before we're putting plants outside. So you do have time, unless you're listening to this on the last day of April. But anyway, so please do not think you're behind. It's just because maybe your seedlings aren't ready to go out until the beginning of June. That's okay too. They will catch up once they get outside. So don't be too intimidated if you're interested in trying out starting some vegetable seeds indoors. I bought some plugs or some tiny Sweet Million cherry tomato plants from my local garden center about 2 weeks ago, and I put them in my indoor click and grow garden. So I have one of basil and 2 of the Sweet Million plants to see how they do in my click and grow, and that's just watered with hydroponically. I guess it's in soil. So no, it's not. But I filled a container and it feeds it that way, as well as being under grow lights. So I will report back and see how that does. You can. I'm really excited about people to try cutting flowers as an option for their garden as well, starting seeds. Because you're starting from seeds, it's like, less than $5 really for a lot of seeds. So it's a low cost entry to something that could be a lot of fun. So if you have a little bare patch in your flower garden or an end of your vegetable garden or just any spot or even a large container, you can start some flower seeds indoors. Snapdragon, zinnias, cosmos, just to name a few. You can spread those and start those inside according to their package, of course, and then transplant them outside, again, into the garden or into containers. And many of them make great pollinators too. And then you can cut the flowers and bring them inside. So it's a nice little treat. And I think, again, it's a great activity for children to give it a shot and learn about flowers and learn about growing, and being able to then make a bouquet of flowers that they grew. I think it's a great way to capture the imagination of children and introduce them into planting. And the other thing is, if you do buy a large package of seed and you want to start some inside, you can also, in that same area where you're going to plant or another area, you can do some direct sowing outside as well in April. And so you'll kind of get a succession. The cold nights will kind of break down that seed, and they may all grow at different stages. So that is another option for you to try. And again, there's all kinds of vegetables that you can try, and with different timings there. So I won't do a deep dive on that, but know that your local garden center has an excellent variety of seeds available. You don't have to worry about the big mailbox mail order places where then you've got to wait for them to get you the seed. You will find excellent variety, I'm confident. And West Coast Seeds is also one of those places. So if you are itching to get started in the garden, and I'm asking you to be patient, one of the things you can do is a spring container. Maybe that's all you need to cure the little fix. If if you had a winter container and it's still full of greens, then you can bag that up, and if your soil is defrosted, then you can maybe add some pansies, add some potted bulbs from your local garden center, or some different branches, whether dogwood or pussy willow or forsythia blooms branches, and you can stick that, and you can make yourself a little container or a large container by your front door. Hellebores is another great thing to add. It's a cool season flower. It's a perennial. So once you buy them, they're available at the garden centers now, and you can put them, they look great in containers, and they'll bloom during this cold month. And then it's a perennial. So then you can add it to your garden to a shady, I like shady area that is close to your front door or close to where you walk or look out at, because they bloom. Mine has been blooming for many weeks now in March, and by my front door. So they are very early bloomers, and they will bloom under the snow. And so they're still blooming when the snow melts. It's great. They're great, beautiful, often called a Christmas rose because they're very pretty, but they're very early in the season. If you can access your vegetable garden, if you do have a vegetable garden, if you can access it easily without walking all over your lawn or the garden, on a nice day, you can, weed that and add some manure or some compost, do some amending in April to your vegetable garden. And you can even work, if you dumped out the old potting soil from some of your containers, you can work that into the vegetable garden too, just to bulk it up a bit. Virtually no nutrients in that. So that's why adding compost and manure is a good idea. But the old soil can give you a little bit of volume if things are getting to be a little bit thin. And so that and getting it all ready for vegetables in the month of, probably by the end of May. But you could, like I said, lettuces and spinach and there's many others that are kind of colder crops. Beets are another one that you can plant. So you can look up some of the cold friendly crops, and you can get started on those at one end of your vegetable garden if it's ready. Now on to perennials. So I know everybody, I'm sure most of my listeners are probably more perennial active and garden active that way, flower gardens. So it is still early. April is a definitely a tricky month. And sometimes it surprised us, but I can definitely say this April of 2026 is probably going to be a very cool and wet one. We'll see what happens. So definitely wait. And the key thing here is to actually just wait for the insects. They'll tell you when things are ready. So keep an eye. You'll start to see bee movement, the little tiny bees, they almost look like little flies. You'll start to see the insects come alive, and that will tell you that they're starting to wake up. And that means you can start, cleaning up the debris that they're still sleeping in. You can try cutting back, especially if your ornamental grasses have kind of flopped over on a walkway or flopped over on the driveway. You can cut them back about 8 inches or a foot from the ground. And if it's still early, you can go ahead and I would cut them off from the base, but just leave the clump or the I guess bunch of old stems lying in the garden. You can do that and let those insects that are, sleeping and hibernating or whatever they're doing inside those stems to really wake up instead of tossing those in a bag prematurely. And the same goes for your other perennials. Wait as long as you can until things warm up and you start to see some insect damage. And for the most case, when things are ready to come out, you don't even need clippers. You should be able to just gently be able to lift the dead last year's growth and scoop it up or put it aside maybe in a pile in another area of your garden, again for those insects to come on out and about. If you have a lot of leaf coverage from fallen trees from the winter, you can move them aside a little bit and let your perennials poke back up. That is no problem. Having a good look at your garden and thinking about what perennials you may want to divide and kind of coming up with a plan for that. Sometimes, sticking a colored tag or maybe a painted rock on the spot so that you remember. Yeah, I was going to divide these. I was going to move this, that type of thing. That can really help. And I always suggest you take a lot of pictures because that can really help in the fall and in the spring. Remind you, oh yes, these two things grew together too much. Yes, I want some more space. Or I don't have anything blooming in this month or this 2 weeks of this garden. I really need to get something that blooms at this time of year. So taking pictures is always a big tip of mine. And I mention it frequently if everybody's interested in my book, Down the Garden Path, Step-by-Step Guide to Your Ontario Garden. There's lots of great tips, and all these monthly tips are in the book as well. So if you want something more tangible to read versus listening to, then please pick up Down the Garden Path, an Ontario guide, step-by-step guide to your Ontario garden. So as far as your perennials go, really take it easy in April and wait for this garden to dry up and the nighttime temperatures, because, you're not behind. You really have to base it on what's happening with those nighttime temperatures. And you'll really start to see things growing. And really, April tends to be the bulbs, right? So hopefully you have some bulbs planted. Some hellebores are always a great add to the garden as well. And if you need a pick-me-up, you can pick up some annual pansies and plot them into some, if you don't want to put them in containers, you can always put those in the garden too, and they add a nice pop of color. But really don't need to do too much digging or dividing. Again, the soil is going to be very wet after the amount of snow that we received this past winter. So I would hold off until we definitely get some nicer, sunnier, warmer days and some increase in nighttime temperatures before I start really digging into the garden. A good time to sharpen your tools, sharpen your pruners, sharpen your shovels even. If you have a garden knife, like I have my Japanese garden knife, giving that a good sharpening so that when you are ready to dig in, literally, your tools are all ready to go. And run out and get some paper bags if you don't have a composter. So you have those in stock too. Sometimes I get keen in the garden and then realize I'm out of bags. So there you go. Next up is our trees. Now, there really isn't that much to do as far as trees go. If you have mature trees that may have some issues or you are concerned about, it really is best to leave the pruning to the pros. So if you have maple trees, or if you have large trees, or if you have neighborhood trees and you have issues with those, then it is really much better to leave it to the professionals and call an arborist for a consultation and get their feedback on what the best, time of year. It might not be the best time of year to do the pruning, and they will help you with that, especially when it comes to evergreens and large mature trees. For any small trees that you may have, added that white plastic tree wrap to the trunk, and now is a fine time to take that off. And if you didn't do that to maybe some young baby trees that you have planted and you see some critter damage, some rodent damage, then next year that is a good thing to add to the base of your trees. Just to prevent, especially when we have so much snow, the little critters are pretty hungry and they will eat just about anything. And if you have a burning bush, then they just devour that usually. If you protected your Japanese maple with a burlap screen, then it's fine for you to remove it. That's something I recommend for people that have more of a young Japanese maple, is doing the 4 posts, 4 wooden stakes, and then wrapping it with burlap just to protect it from the big amount of snow, which we did get, like a lot of pressure on the little tree, and from the winter wind. So I know I did that for 2 of my little new purchases this year. But I didn't need to do it for any of my more established Japanese maples. So if you did protect them, then you can go ahead and remove that now. And if you didn't do that, if you didn't protect a young Japanese maple and you see a lot of broken branches, or if it's in an area, let's say where a lot of driveway snow was, shoveled onto it, and there's some broken branches or some damage, then that might be something you consider for next year, is to provide that screen. And I'll talk to you more about that in next year in November in the garden, or later this year in November in the garden. When it comes to shrubs, the common popular mistake is to start pruning and start cutting them a little too early. And especially if you prune things that are going to bloom in the spring, like weigela, like lilac especially. Many of the other, now's not the time to, early April is not the time to prune your forsythia, even though it might be large and overgrown. It's not the time because it's just about to bloom. That's the idea. So really hold off on anything. Even if you're not sure when it's going to bloom, the best thing is to wait until after it blooms if you need to prune it. Unless, now my one exception there, well, still if it's a spring bloomer, then I think I would still hang off. But if you have hydrangeas, I will get back to hydrangeas, they can be deadheaded. So I like to I don't cut anything back in the fall. So I have dried up, flower heads all over my hydrangeas. So spring is a perfect time to go ahead. April is a perfect time to go ahead and just deadhead them. You don't want to cut the stems. You don't want to cut them back. You just want to go in and deadhead your hydrangeas. And Annabelle hydrangeas especially, I feel strongly that it's best they are known as more of the floppy version of hydrangeas. They are the ones that grow predominantly in the shade, although they will tolerate some sun. And they're known for, people using peony cages and lots of string to kind of keep them propped up, because they get cut to the ground this time of year. And then those new stems grow in so thin and weak and can't support their blooms. I don't know why that happens, but it does. So I suggest just deadheading and letting the wood of the shrub thicken up so that it can support the blooms, and you don't have that problem. And if you have a really mature one and you feel like it does need some rejuvenation, then just trim out every other year, trim out a third, but leave a framework of large, thicker stems that will contribute to supporting the plant. I swear by this method. So reach out if you want some more information about that. And the other exception with pruning shrubs at this time of year is if you have a very large, let's say limelight hydrangea or a large paniculata hydrangea standard, and it's getting really too big. So early April, and again, before there's any warm up, before there are any buds happening, leaf buds even on the stems, on the wood, this is a time where you can go ahead and prune it hard. Usually it's March, but our March was still so much snow, it was really hard to get out there. So I know I'm going to do it to a few clients this year, is that you can go ahead and cut those back really hard, and they will bounce back, don't worry, but it's only if you're controlling the size is it a good time to cut those hydrangeas back really hard this early in the month. You will delay the blooms a little bit, but you will not forsake the blooms like you would if you cut a lilac or a wigelia or a forsythia, or an early blooming viburnum, anything that's blooming super early. If you were to cut them, even to control the size, you're going to lose the blooms this year. But with a hydrangea, they're going to start blooming more in June and July, so you have some time for the shrub to catch up. So not to worry there. So that tends to be the biggest thing, is to really know the timing of when you want to prune your shrubs, your flowering shrubs. When it comes to evergreens, though, you also don't want to be doing any extreme pruning either in April. If anything, the only thing you really want to do is remove any winter kill. If you've had, like I did, some yews underneath these big snow piles of snow, and there's maybe some broken branches or some broken stems, then yes, you can go in with clean pruners and clean those up. And, trim those broken things off. Your boxwoods, if you still have some boxwoods alive, go ahead. Same with cedars and junipers. So any damage that you've seen from the winter, from shoveling, from the snow blower, or from the plow, go ahead and clean that up and make sure, it's all sanitary and you've got some clean cuts there, so you don't worry about any fungus or insect damage happening because of weak branches. But as far as pruning for shape and style or anything like that, it's best to wait until after the new growth. So, they're also preparing to put out, since we get some warm temperatures, put out some new growth on their plant. And so you want to really wait until that happens. And then you can, so usually we're pruning evergreens in June after their first flush of new growth. And you'll often get a second flush in August as well. So it's not the time to get out the hedge trimmers and make your perfectly shaped hedge in April, but you can take a look and pay attention to what else might be happening with all the things in your garden underneath all that snow that we've had this year. I know my mops cypress got a real beating because it is in the perfect spot where we put a lot of our snow at the top of my driveway. So it's looking a little thin and a little sad. And they might even be looking a little anemic too. But I think once things heat up and the soil starts to dry and we get some sun, you'll be amazed at how quickly evergreens actually bounce back. So from my time in the garden center and the accepting returns, many times gardeners are just a little too quick to dig out a plant. So be patient and wait for the soil and the temperatures, the soil to warm up and the temperatures to warm up before doing anything drastic in your garden. I hope these tips have helped you, and I hope it will make you more successful and keep your garden as low maintenance as possible. That's what I aim to do here on Down the Garden Path. And like I said, my book is available, Down the Garden Path, step-by-step guide to your Ontario garden, and it tells you what to do, when to do it in that book. And it's available on Amazon. So the biggest takeaways for April in the garden are patience. Pay attention to the nighttime temperatures for both your garden and your grass seed and your seed starting, as well as watch for insect activity, and that will tell you when it's time. The insects will really tell you when it is time to start cutting back your perennials or cleaning up the debris in your garden. And it might not be until May. You never know. We have to watch for the first two. Watch for the temperatures and for the soil to dry out. So thank you for joining me once again down the garden path, and we'll speak to you soon.